What's up, guys? My name's Cam, and in this video today I want to talk a little bit about social anxiety and really just kind of how I deal with my own social anxiety and what has helped me improve over the years. Because back when I was like 20-ish, 21, I developed really bad social anxiety, and it lasted for probably like 4 or 5 years before I actually started to change it and get a little bit better. And I'm now in a pretty comfortable spot where, it does still linger. I think it lingers with everybody. But I'm so much better now than I was before. So again, I just want to kind of give some tips that have helped me, and hopefully maybe they can help some of you guys as well. Tip number one is basically just understanding that nobody cares what you're doing. So this was a big one for me. For whatever reason, just always thought that people were judging me or staring at me or like talking about me. Like if I was in a classroom and somebody like started laughing off in the corner, like immediately I just thought it was about me, right? For no particular reason whatsoever. And if you have social anxiety, I'm sure you can understand this. There really is no explanation for it, but you just feel like you're always being watched and you're always being judged. And it sounds kind of cliche, like even through my years, like people have always said like, oh, like nobody cares what you're doing, like blah blah blah. It took a little while for me to actually grasp that and understand that. But I mean, to be honest, it is true. I think the older you get as well, the more a lot of this stuff kind of makes sense. And I mean, to be honest, it's true. Like so many other people out there are either probably have social anxiety themselves and are dealing with the exact same thing that you're dealing with. Or two, they're just going about their life plans. They have their own life stresses and so on. So I mean, like an example, you could be walking past somebody on the street, and as you're walking up to this person, like immediately it clicks in that you're social anxiety and you're thinking this person's judging you or watching you or whatever the case is. And in reality, like this person could be on their way to a job interview or something, and in their head, they're thinking about all the questions they're going to be asked. They're thinking about who else applied to the job, how many people applied to the job, if they're going to get the job, if they want the job. Like all of this stuff is probably going on in their head. Or maybe they have like family issues that they're dealing with, right? And they're just running through all of this stuff in their head. And then as you guys cross paths, he probably didn't even like recognize you or see you in any way, right? Now I understand this isn't every single situation, but it is the case in a lot of situations, okay? Not everybody's paying attention to you in any way, shape, or form. And one actual life example that I had with this where it really kind of clicked in my head was when I started serving, and I had these two customers. There was a guy and a girl, and for whatever reason they just seemed really short and bland and almost like kind of like upset or angry. So initially, my anxiety clicked in and I started thinking like, did I give off like a bad vibe? Did I not like greet them well enough or something? Did I mess up their order? Whatever the case is. And running through all these situations in my head, and towards like the end of their stay, I actually like realized and found out that they were fighting with each other. And to be honest, they probably had zero concern whatsoever with me, and they were 100% focused in obviously on what they were talking about. So again, it seems obvious, and I know a lot of people say it, but truly understand that nobody cares at all what you're doing, okay? Nobody's paying attention to you. So moving on to my second tip here, and this is kind of embrace your embarrassments and joke about them, if that makes sense. So I guess what I mean by this, one issue that I have really bad is I sweat like horribly from my armpits. I just always sweat constantly, and if I'm in like a public situation, I get nervous, especially I'm like dripping in sweat. And before, I would just constantly keep my arms down, and I would not want to like lift my armpits up at all to show any of the sweat because it was embarrassing to me, and I thought people cared about that, right? And now I just get to the point where, if it starts sweating, I'm like immediately open about it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm sweating so bad, blah blah blah. And it just kind of makes like a joke out of the situation, I guess. And to be honest with you, like 9 times out of 10, whenever I do it, somebody else is also going through the same exact thing, and they're also sweating really bad. So then you can kind of laugh about it with each other. And then the third tip that I have is to focus on whatever task is at hand. Okay, so what I mean by that is if you are going out into a public place, chances are you're probably doing it for a reason, right? So you might be going to the gym, you might be going to school, whatever the case is, you're probably out doing something, right? Probably not just like mindlessly walking around. When I was back at university, I would get really nervous about going to the library to study. Absolutely no idea why, right? I did not like people looking at me. Again, I just always thought people were judging me 24/7, and it made it really hard to do any sort of studying. I would get to the library, I would open my laptop up, I would probably put headphones or something in because I didn't want anybody to bother me at all. But as soon as I went to start studying, all I could think about was the people around me, and I wouldn't get anything done. I wouldn't retain any information that I was reading, and all in all, it just sucked. My eye. And all in all, it just sucked. I wasn't focused on anything. And then the same thing when I would go to class too. Like if I was at lectures, I would sit down and, pretend that I'm paying attention. And in reality, the only thing I would think of was just people around me. And you have to just find a way to just get that out of your head, okay? Because again, nobody gives a shit what you're doing, okay? Sit down, focus on whatever the task is that you are trying to do. Because again, one, it's going to make you forget about what other people are doing, right? Or what they're thinking. If you're actually paying attention to class and trying to learn, you're not going to be focused on anybody else around you. And then two, you're going to successfully complete whatever it is that you're out trying to do. So moving on to tip 4, and this one is kind of difficult, but it does help so much. And it's building your confidence. Okay, so with myself, if I had like an all-time high of confidence for whatever reason for that day, my social anxiety would essentially be almost gone. Okay, so some days were better than others. I would just wake up randomly and just be confident, and for whatever reason. And then there were other days where it was the complete opposite. So a couple of things that have helped me build confidence is one, knowledge. There were times where part of my social anxiety would be from thinking what other people thought of me and if they were judging me and whatnot. But then another part of it was, since I was so focused on people, I wouldn't pay that much attention to class, if I'm being honest with you. So if there were times where, the teacher was calling on random people to answer questions, I would go into full-blown panic because I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea what any of the answers were. So if I had knowledge on what I was actually supposed to be learning, it would have been totally different. I would have answered the question immediately, and honestly, my confidence probably would have shot up like crazy. So knowledge is a big one for sure. Another example with this, so I started getting into weight training and lifting back when my social anxiety really started to take over. And initially I was like everybody else, where I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And I would just kind of go mindlessly do a bunch of random workouts. I had somewhat of an idea, but it wasn't anything I really did not know what I was doing. And I was terrified to try any new exercise whatsoever. So eventually, I ended up getting a personal training certification, and I studied personal training, and I studied exercise, physiology, all of that stuff. And I got to a point where I was just really confident in going to the gym. I understood what I was doing. I knew what exercises were supposed to be working what muscle. I knew how to do the exercises. I wasn't afraid to try new exercises or try new things. So that's, I guess, another example of how building knowledge can help build confidence. But another way to build confidence too is that whole look good, feel good saying, if you've ever heard that. Basically just I know there's a ton of people who will just get up and they roll out of bed and they throw sweats on or whatever and they go to class, which is fine. Obviously there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But something that helped me was actually taking the extra time to, I don't know, gel my hair or put nice clothes on, or I don't know, have at least what I thought was good style at the point in time. I wasn't wearing I don't know, shoes that I didn't like. I wasn't wearing stuff that I thought was unstylish. I liked what I was wearing. I felt good, and it really goes a long way compared to if you wake up and you have, I don't know, a bad hair day or something, or maybe you, I don't know, need to do laundry and you don't have any of the clothes that you like, right? To kind of present yourself in a healthy way, if that makes sense. I don't know. It goes a really long way. All right, and then the 5th and final tip, honestly, in my opinion, this is the only one that is going to actually help and change you. All the ones prior to that, though, kind of help lead up to this one. And this final tip is to force yourself to change. You have to force yourself into uncomfortable situations. Think about it like this. Social anxiety, all it is an adaptation. And at one point in your life, you were in a situation that made you very uncomfortable, and your brain realized that and said, I don't want to be in a situation like this anymore. let's take a step back and not do that again. And that subconsciously going through your mind over and over has pulled you out of like these social situations. You've adapted to not talk to people, and you've adapted to not go out in public, and all of that. Our brains are designed to make our lives as easy as possible. Okay, they want all of our habits to be automatic. Our brains don't want to work, honestly, and the only way to change that is you can do it slowly, obviously, but you have to force yourself out of that isolated situation and put yourself in these uncomfortable situations if you want to truly change. So how I ended up doing this, this was a few years ago. Again, I got a personal training certification, and the first job that I applied to was a group training facility. Okay, so essentially my job was to instruct like 10 plus people on like what the workout was, how to do it, etc., etc. And coming from somebody who is as socially anxious as me, this was beyond horrifying. I can't even like explain to you how nervous and how terrified I was to do this job. When I got the call for the interview, and the day of the interview came up, no joke, I sat on the edge of my bed. I was this close to not going to the interview and just like ghosting him. And I ended up, for whatever reason, that day just decided to go through with it. And I did it, and it was absolutely life-changing. To this day, truthfully, if I did not have that job, I don't think I would be even remotely close to the situation that I'm in right now. The fact that I forced myself into this extremely uncomfortable situation, and I was forced to talk in front of people. I was forced to talk in front of my boss, essentially, while I train these people, while he's watching me, judging me, everything that I do. And if I say something wrong, or if I like perform a workout wrong or teach him wrong, like that's all on me. So it was a ton of pressure, but again, it was beyond life-changing. And I can confidently say it probably took 3, maybe 4 months, give or take, to where I was pretty confident in like honestly talking to almost anybody. Again, I don't think it necessarily has to be that extreme, going from social anxiety again to talking in front of like multiple people at once, kind of being like the face and the head of the room. But you have to do something to slowly incorporate getting yourself out of that isolated, setting, and slowly working your way into talking to people, into talking with the public and people that you don't know. I think a good way to maybe start with this is going out with like, I don't know, 1 or 2 friends, and whenever you guys go out, you do all the talking. You go up to like a bar or something, you order all the drinks, right? So you do all the talking, you have like this social, not like social group behind you, but you have like, I don't know, people backing you up essentially, and that makes things a little bit easier. Another thing that you can do is just like, instead of going through like the self-checkout at a grocery store, go through the actual line and talk with the cashier. Again, it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to know their life story or anything, but just like really little small talk. And if you're like scared of that, just go in and buy like 1 or 2 things, so they're not like, sitting there ringing up your food for like 5 minutes and you're thinking that you have to talk to them for 5 minutes straight. Just go in and buy like 1 or 2 things, slowly small talk with the cashier as they ring up your 1 or 2 things. It'll be over in 2 minutes, and then you can kind of go on your way. The biggest thing is just simply forcing yourself into uncomfortable situations. I cannot stress that enough, because if you don't do that, honestly, unfortunately, it's never going to change. Like, you're never ever going to get out of that isolation, and all it's going to do is get worse, because the longer you're there, the more your brain gets used to it, and the more it becomes habits, and the more your brain does not want to get out of it. Okay, so I know this was kind of like a rambling video. Occasionally I like to do these things just because I like talking about this kind of stuff, and it helps me a little bit. And again, I hope some of these tips potentially can help you. If you are dealing with social anxiety yourself, I would love to hear any tips that you have that help you, or if you've previously had social anxiety and you've completely overcome it. I would love to know how, because I still struggle with it on a day-to-day basis. Honestly, even like making these videos are kind of tough. But like I said, it is something I've almost gotten over. I am very confident in actually talking to especially strangers now. So again, yeah, hopefully some of these helped. And yeah, Have a good day.